Because you are a child of God. You are showing God, you are showing Jesus Christ to the people that you come into contact with. So we may look at ourselves and we say, well, why would God ever choose somebody like me to show his greatness? I never had that problem. I knew why God wanted me. Such a good-looking man. Who could he? Kidding. I'll agree. So it's got to be so. We look at ourselves and we go, why would God ever choose me? What could there be about me? What could it be? I'm such a mess up. Before I came to know the Lord, I screwed up my life so royally. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. I ended up there and I ended up here and I ended up back and forth. How could God ever, why would he have chosen me? And a lot of Christians will come into the body of Christ, especially Christians that have lived in the world for a while. They'll come into the body of Christ and their first attitude is, why would God have picked me? And if I've wasted all these years and I've done this wrong and if I hadn't done that and I could have come so much, and that's all true. But the fact of the matter is, God picked you. God chose you. He destined you. He made you ready. And you don't need to be wondering why. It's because he loved you. Well, with all these weaknesses, how could God ever think that I would be like him? Well, God knew you before you ever sinned. See, he knew you when you were wonderful. He knew you when you were better than even what your mother thought you were. God knew you back before the world was even created. He had already looked through history and said, and when I create this one, and then he had a picture of what this one was going to look like. Before Satan ever got his hands on you, before the devil ever got his way with any of the world, he knew you when you were every bit as wonderful as you were meant to be, before your life got messed up. He knew you when you were just an image on the inside of him. Have you ever talked to a pregnant woman? Do you know they have not one of them ever plans on having an ugly baby? Not one of them ever is going to have a loser. You don't hear pregnant women talking about their babies that they're going to have, and they're going to say, well, I'm probably going to have a boy, and he's probably going to be just a real jerk. I don't even know why I started this. This kid's probably going to end up on drugs and in jail. So ugly, nobody's going to want him. You don't hear women talk that way, do you? When they're having babies, they're talking about how this baby is going to be, you would think, this is be the child, that is only the reason the sun comes up is for this child. If this child never existed, then the sun would have no reason to be here. They talk about the dreams that they have for their children, and this is going to be a baby boy or a baby girl, and they're going to grow up and they're going to love the Lord and they're going to find their destiny, and they're just going to be, they could be the next prime minister right here. And they've got dreams and they've got visions, but they're always dreams of good and they're dreams of success. When you were an image on the inside of God, he wasn't thinking bad things.
That's true.
When you were that image on the inside of God, Jeremiah tells you that God said, I know the plans I have for you. Plans to give you hope and a future. He knows those plans. He made those plans before the world system ever got its fangs into you. He knew those plans before Satan managed to pervert one part of you. And that's the image that he has, and that's the image that he knows you were created to be. You were created to be that image. You were created to be all that and more. You were created to be everything that he said about you. You know that image that he has of you? How many women, when you've talked to them when they're pregnant, they're going to say, well, I'm going to have a little boy and he's going to look just like his daddy. I believe almost every one. Because they created an image. You know, you don't have a woman that's married to somebody that's tall, dark, and handsome going, well, this kid's going to be short, fat, and blonde. They have an image, and the image is that this child is going to be like his dad. Or like his mother or some other. Well, God had an image of you in himself, and his image was that you were going to be like your dad. Him. His image of you was that you were going to look just like he did. Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 tells us that Adam and Eve were made in the image of God. They weren't made in the image of anything else. They were made in his image. So if you saw Adam and Eve, if you could have seen Adam and Eve back when they were first in the garden, you would have seen what it was to have a flesh and blood representation of God himself. Sin had not entered the world. Disobedience had not yet raised its ugly head. Adam and Eve were able to represent God to the world. And that's why God said, now take this world and subdue it. Go out and make more, just like you. Go bring my image to every corner of this earth. If you would have seen Adam and Eve, you would have seen a flesh and blood representation of God himself. And that was exactly what God intended for all of his children to be. You were intended to be a flesh and blood representation of God. But then the devil got in there and messed things up. Things stayed messed up for about 4,000 years. But the whole time, God was still working out his plan. His plan hadn't changed. His plan was, I'm going to have sons and daughters on this earth. I am going to have sons and daughters in my image. I will have it. Well, how many of you have known that if God decides that something's going to be, it is? So he continued to work out his plan. He made sons and daughters. He made sons and daughters that were to be flesh and blood, manifestations of himself. That was God's original plan, and that was God's plan that has never changed, and that's God's plan today. He still wants to have sons and daughters that will be able to show him to this world. See, when Jesus came to this earth, he picked up exactly where Adam had left off. But he lived his life in perfect relationship with his Father. That's why the Bible calls the first Adam and the second Adam. The first Adam got sidetracked. He got waylaid. He ended up giving up. But the second Adam fulfilled God's plan. And he lived his life as a perfect reflection of his Father. He said what he heard his Father say. He did what he heard his Father do. He did it so completely that at the end of his earthly ministry, Jesus said, "He that hath seen me hath seen the Father." John 14, verse 9. He that has seen me has seen the Father. He was the reflection. In fact, his disciples came to him and they had walked with him. They had talked to him. They had been there. They had eaten with him. And they said, and Philip said, "Show us the Father." And Jesus said, "Have I been with you this long and you haven't seen the Father yet? I've been with you this long that I am the Father. He that has seen me has seen the Father." Don't you understand, guys?